Willkommen Nacht Drinks Coach. Yeah, I can say that. I'm half German, right? So you might be able to hear a helicopter in the background. I did try and start filming one of these, and then it just sounds like there must have been a breakout at Wandsworth Prison or something, because there's police helicopters and torches all over the green. So don't know what's going on there. Welcome to Drinks Coach. There's probably been a bit of a gap between this episode and the one we had before, but I've been away celebrating my mother's 80th birthday in Sweden, which is lovely, with my brother. At this stage, I can't tell you how that went because I'm filming this before I go. So yeah, there we go. The Drinks Coach, YouTube, that's what you're watching. Hit that bell, hit the subscribe to get notifications of new shows as they come up. I did some on, most recently, on sort of like a beginning of a roundup for Christmas. We have Vinesack as my main moniker, and we have Drinks Coach UK as my other. I've been covering as many of my favourite multiple retailers, high streets or otherwise, and some more maybe small independent creative agencies. I think so far we've had Sainsbury's and Tesco's. There will be some Waitrose, there will be some Majestic, there will be some etc, Co-op, I'm sure. But I've got two other special treats in store for you over the next two shows. The next one I'm going to do will be with the wonderful Lee and Sandeman, run by the great Charles Lee and lovely David Porter, who both have an incredible palate, and they are great original thinkers and have beautiful wines on a range that seems to be endless, but in fact quite compact and well organised. It just has so much variety within that. It feels like that you can buy anything there, and they are real specialists of the classics, like Italian wines from Tuscany, from Bordeaux, from Burgundy. That's kind of what they excel at in a lot of ways. So I'll be doing a tasting on that. But today, we're going to go to Adnams of Southwold. Yes, Adnams, you know, the brewer. The brewer. If you've ever drunk Ghost Ship, one of the best-selling beers in the country, real ales anyway. I'm a big fan of the Broadside, quite punchy pints. Don't drink too many of those. And, of course, you can't mention Adnams without mentioning Tally-Ho, which is, it's ketamine in a glass, basically. One glass of that and you start speaking Mandarin. But it's absolutely delicious, and it's a great Christmas barley wine. Whenever I think of Adnams as a brewer, I think of the Queen's Head in Newton, in the outskirts of Cambridge. Undoubtedly, in my opinion, my favourite pub in the country, and an extraordinary place to be. And they serve it straight from the keg, off a rick at the back. And yeah, a few pints of Broadside or a few pints of Ghost Ship are consumed every Christmas with a glass or a mug of their incredible soup. Now, Adnams, you might know about them as a brewer. You also will maybe know them as a distiller. I think back in 2018 they opened a super distillery. 2010 I think they started distilling, and they were really early to market. I believe they were the first independent brewer in the country to be allowed to distill. People always ask me, why weren't all these gins available before? Why has there been suddenly an explosion of gins? So, well, actually, the ease at which you can get a licence has changed. And that really is fundamentally it. It was impossible to get a licence before. But one thing that we forget about with Adnams is they've been selling really fine flipping wine for well over 100 years. And they are one of the great wine merchants of Eastern England. They sell all over the country. Obviously, they have lots of tied houses, or houses they still trade with, even as free houses, and their wine range has some real gems. Some gems they've been doing forever, some more recent, more exciting buying recently. Thank you, Dan, who's their new wine ambassador, who's been tasked with giving Adnams back its wine chops, because I don't think people give it enough credit. Adnams hadn't done a solo portfolio tasting until a few weeks ago for many years, but they were sort of like bunched together with other people in a group called The Bunch, actually, ironically. But here we are with some wines to taste. I've just realised that I haven't pulled the reds out of the box, so this might be a little bit Zats and Heath Robinson, but we'll get on with things as they are. We'll start off with the cold whites. Yes, Adnams have been making beer, or people have been brewing beer on their site for nearly 700 years. I mean, 680 years or something. Some lady got done tweaking the measurements back in 1345, would you believe? So although Shepherd Neame famously is the oldest continually brewing brewery, Adnams really does go back quite a long way, a very long way indeed. So, without further ado, what have Adnams got which you need to see? Well, I've always thought of Adnams as a place to go for the classics, and that's as true as ever. But there are some wonderfully creative bits and bobs now available there. Certainly one of the reds, which I'll pull out of the box in a minute, is an absolute cracker, and it's from a very good modern new producer. But without further ado, I think we'll start with some whites and some fizz. Christmas is not complete without fizz, obviously. And I haven't done much sparkling wine or champagne on this channel for a long time until I started doing these reviews, so I'm quite enjoying this at the moment. Thank you very much to Adnams for actually, after I told them which wines I like, they actually very kindly donated these samples. I didn't pay for them myself, although I have pre-tasted them, so I know these are good. These are the ones out of quite a large, extensive tasting which I selected. So, starting off with this, the world's most popular and sort of ubiquitous wine. It just says Sauvignon Blanc on the front. This is Sauvignon Blanc Vin de France Adnams. Nice cheeky little summery spring label. It says Vin de France, which means it's not even Vin de Medoc. When I say not even, it's probably collected from vineyards from across borders. So actually it's only allowed to be called French table wine. But the wine inside is really lovely. And it comes from quite a senior and a very highly regarded Loire producer called Paul Buisse. So when I was tasting them, I'm thinking, oh, this is basically pub by the glass French Sauvignon Blanc. I mean, how good is this going to be? Because it's an independent retailer, and they're only charging $8.49 a bottle for this online. You can buy it at $8.49, delivered to your house. I think it's really, really nice. It's fantastic, in fact. It's smells a little bit Bordelais. It smells a bit riper than it would be from the Loire, but it's got this lovely herby, ripe smell of the garden about it. I'm not talking green grass here as much as elderflowers and honeysuckle a little bit. Elderflower, definitely. There's almost a cow parsley note underneath it. But this is a wine that if you want to have a party slugger for Christmas, and there are moments during the cold and the dreadful weather we're almost no doubt going to have, where you want a bit of a pick-me-up that makes you feel like it's a bit sunshiny, then this is the one to drink. I think it's really first class, and it smells like, or it has little notions of really quite smart wines. It's a little bit Sancerre, it's a bit Parfumé, it's a bit Bordeaux, and the fact that I'm saying all those things, it's quite complex for an £8.49 Sauvignon Blanc. Now, when you drink it, it's very easy. It's a simple glide. It's not super concentrated, so you can see where the price maybe comes from. It's all the better for it, though. It's a crushable wine. It's a gluggable drink. This and a plate of goat's cheese, maybe as a sort of like stopgap when you don't want to cook in the festive season, or maybe with a plate of smoked fish or something like that as a starter. This really is a very versatile wine. If you like Sauvignon Blanc, this isn't in the New Zealand style. This is in the riper, more Bordeaux style. And with that in mind, I think with the oyster season now well underway, this is probably absolutely flipping smashing with oysters. Woo, yes, that's good. $8.49, and I'll be seeing the back of that this evening. So, this is a bottle. I love this bottle because it looks both smart and it's also almost ironic. It just says champagne, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Or why shouldn't it? I mean, every bottle of Prosecco you ever bought just says Prosecco on the front. This is a producer which has been supplying Adnams of Southwold for a very long time. Before this, back in the day when I was skinny and young and impressionable, back in, let's say, the early 90s, I used to manage and undermanage, to start with, an Oddbins. The Oddbins was the place to go for your funky wine, and you go in and find loads of emaciated students behind the counter who smelt slightly of weed while playing Radiohead all hours of the day. I'm not talking about myself necessarily, but we used to sell the wine that's in this bottle as one of the kind of like little discoveries of Oddbins. Oddbins did very, very well with sparkling wine. I believe they sold something like 52% of all the sparkling wine in England, of 2% of the realtor space, or of the merchandised selling space. It was just extraordinary. So half of all the wine in the world, that was like 140 small shops. So not in the world, in the country, obviously. But this wine is from a producer which I kind of lost in the distance every now and then. I see it on a wine list. And they also make Adnams' vintage wine, which is a 2012, which is a stunner of a vintage, by the way. It's my favourite vintage since 2002. And it really is not to be sniffed at. And their vintage champagne, I think, is like £41. For good quality, premium vintage wine, that's not a lot of money. And in fact, this wine undercuts some supermarket champagnes at £26. This is £26. It comes from Hash Blanc, hash meaning H, so it's H Blin. Okay, Hash Blanc. And famously, I think it's one of the best producers, and I think they are from the Valley de la Marne. I'm not 100% sure, but what makes this wine really stand out is it shows how good Meunier can be as a grape variety. We know about Chardonnay, we know about Pinot Noir, and there's this other variety which up until recently used to be called Pinot Meunier. It's called Meunier now, and this one is 80% Meunier. Meunier is not allowed in Grand Cru wines because it's seen as like the second cousin. It's not allowed to be planted in Grand Cru districts. But when we've seen the results of Meunier being grown in the UK, even on some of the premium chalk soils of Hampshire, we found that Meunier not only makes astonishingly good rosés, but has real minerality and chutzpah of its own, and I think it's capable of making really beautiful champagne. And I think the one thing that would be the evidence of that is my favourite champagne and many people's favourite champagne, the otherworldly Krug. Krug is called Krug Grand Cuvée, but it's not a Grand Cru because it contains anything between 8 and 13% Pinot Meunier or Meunier. So yeah, if it's good enough for Krug, it's good enough for me, and it's good enough for Adnams by accounts. So this wine has a lovely patina to it. You can see it's got some bottle age on it. I'm only guessing, but with a colour like that, some of that colour may have come from the skin, but also I'm guessing it's going to be at least 3 and a bit years. Oh, God, that's so good. Do you know what it smells like? It smells like one of my favourite Christmas things, which is Fortnum Mason chocolate creams. You get rose creams and violet creams. And this smells like the rose creams. It's like a crystallised rose petal. It's both floral and red fruity at the same time. Rose hip. I've probably said this before, but in Sweden, when people are sick, they drink a thing called nyponsoppa. And nyponsoppa is large, giant, plump rose hips, which you can find on the dunes of the beaches, which make this extraordinarily delicious cordial, and they also make a rich soup. And you can buy it in cartons in the supermarket, and it's extremely healthy for you, with giant amounts of vitamin C. If you're in the right mood, this is all the champagne you would ever need. You wouldn't need any champagne that's any more expensive than this. You would go, I'll have another. It's absolutely delicious. It's Moorish, beautiful red currant fruit, like I said, with a bit of rose hip thrown in, bit of florality. And when you taste it, there's instant, because of the dead yeast cells that are in the bottle when the wine is aged, you get something called autolysis, which with Meunier manifests itself as just like a taste of, just a bite of wholemeal sourdough. There's kind of a doughy but very satisfying minerally umami hit, and it's bready in a weird way. Not sort of like bready, more like crouton, crunchy. I don't know what it is, but that flavour works very well in this style of wine. Shit, that's great. Okay, so £8.49, 26 quid. 2 more to come. This wine's really lovely. We just look at the label. It says Chenin Blanc Stellenbosch wines of South Africa, and it's another one of these lovely Adnams labels. Very smart. I noticed that when we were going through the tasting that it was 2020. Now, we're already selling 2023 Sauvignons and 2023 Chenin Blancs from South Africa in this country and in New Zealand because it's from the Southern Hemisphere. The wine was made back in March. Why 2020? That's 3 years old. I was thinking, have they just got too much of an old vintage and they've what we call submarine wines that resurface after a period of time? It is a phrase. But it's not a submarine wine. This is Dan going to one of the most respected white wine producers in the whole of Stellenbosch, which is the kind of like the Bethlehem of winemaking in South Africa. And in the heartlands of Stellenbosch is an estate called De Morganson. And De Morganson have won all sorts of countless trophies with their Chenin Blanc and their Chardonnays. At the International Wine Challenge, which I've now been a judge at for 27 years, a few years ago, the 2015 vintage of their Chardonnay won World's Best White Wine. And if you drink it now, it absolutely justifies that price tag and that moniker. And what I say, price tag, it's probably about, it's going to be north of £30 now, I imagine, because it's getting a bit of reputation. But there's a second label called, I think, DMZ, which is De Morganzon's kind of like everyday bistro wines. And I think that's what we've got here. But the thing is, this wine's 2020, and Dan knows how good Chenin Blanc ages. We don't get a chance to taste aged Chenin Blanc. This wine probably had a small amount in wood in big old foeders to allow it to affinage slowly like a proper white Burgundy or an old white Loire wine would. And what made this really exciting is for £13, we're getting a wine that hasn't been on the shelf for 2 or 3 years. And I'm just glad that he convinced them to make their wine under his label. 2020 was a very, very warm year. Didn't suffer from the same drought conditions that 2016 and 18 did. But 2020 is capable of making some really concentrated, robust wines. And this wine probably didn't taste as delicious when it was first released as it does now. It probably needed time. And if there's one new world-class wine, fine wine style, it is the style of South African oaked or barrel fermented or lightly wooded Chenin Blanc, which is it's almost all I drink these days, because the value compared to everyday other wines is absurd. But anyway, let's have a look at this one. Is it a colour? Well, see, it's 3 years old. There's no atrophy. There's no degradation. Sure, there's a little bit of patina to it, a little bit of a autumnal glow to it, but that wine does not look like it's getting old or oxidised. Ah, the nose. First thing that hits you is a sappy, lovely, damp, kind of hazel switch, nutty, woody note, which shows to me this wine has been in old wood barrels, some of it anyway. And then there's this thunk of beautiful quince jam, like I don't know if you've ever had that little paste you have with cheeses from Portugal called a membrillo, but it's a quince jelly, and it's lovely with runny cheeses and with blue cheeses. And this wine has a smell of kind of dried, fudgy, figgy quince. At the same time, the wine is very light and fresh. I don't want to give the impression that it tastes like an old wine. It doesn't. It's got that savoury note to it, but in the background, I'm smelling preserved lemons. And when you taste this wine, that sort of saline of salty preserved lemons comes back, and it dances lightly on the tongue. It's got a little bit of tannin, just furthers the gums up just a little bit, which makes this wine incredibly gastronomic. I'm thinking all the things I might want to eat with it. I think it'd be lovely with some oily fish, maybe some I don't know, some snapper or some off the barbecue, or maybe something a bit more punch, maybe something like an anchovy salad or something. Anyway, was it 13 quid? Might have been a bit more than that. 13.99. So 14 quid. But remember, you're buying a wine which is just that bit better, from incredible provenance, but also they've held it back for us to try, and that really is a wonderful experience. If you like New Zealand, if you like South African Sauvignon, If you like South African Chenin Blanc, and you want the next level experience, this is what happens when you put it in a rack and carefully look after it for a few years. So, just to recap, £8.49 for a bottle of very nice Sauvignon Blanc, £26 for a most excellent and delicious and well-balanced champagne, and £13.99 for a Stellenbosch Chenin Blanc from the great De Morganzon. Bringing us on to a wine that I think Adnams have been selling for decades, literally decades, but they've always had very good village Burgundy. I don't know if you know my opinions on this. I think I might have mentioned it a few times in recent shows, but Chardonnay from Burgundy is getting so laughably expensive. I don't want to have anything to do with it. And if I'm pointing wines out this year, it's because they truly they're worth the new highfalutin price. And let's remember, like, everyday village Burgundies from 10 years ago are now selling for £35, like Rui and things like that, and Saint Romain's more than that. But here we've got a wine which comes from the Macon. It's from Domaine Talmard. Talmard have been making brilliant Macon for years. I think the one that I always remember is a Macon d'Availlé. I think they have a d'Availlé, which is a very small village in Macon. And the wines are almost Puy Fuissé good, which is the best wine of the district. Here, what vintage are we on? 2022. I thought it was 21, but it's 22. Okay. Labels perfectly serviceable, nice and pretty. O label, Adnams White Burgundy. I showed a Old Vine Chablis from 2020, which is being sold in Sainsbury's last week, and absolutely fantastic wine that is. But the reason why I got on the show is because it's only £17. £17 is cheap for now. That's cheaper than you'd expect from a well-identified individual village Chablis. This wine, if I'm honest, has more suavity. It's more slick. Feels more handmade. It's not made in a giant co-op, although the other one was very good. This wine has craftsmanship written on it. And this wine is $14.49 for a white Burgundy. I don't recommend you go much cheaper than that anymore. If you see a bottle that says white Burgundy on the front of it and it's been sold in the UK, if it's 10 quid, you've probably been robbed. It's probably foul. I apologise if it turns out to be the bargain of the century, but I think that's highly unlikely. People who love drinking Chardonnay from Burgundy tend to ferret out these bargains, and they go very, very quickly. But here we've got a bottle of wine which tastes broader and creamier than a Chablis, but has the same spectrum of ripeness. It's taste of cool sugar melon, slices of green melon, or balls of melon. You even get a little lick of the old kind of Parma ham in the background as well. So I think ham on and melon and a glass of this would be an absolutely exquisite small lunch or pre-teaser to a feast this Christmas. Wow, Adnams, you're still doing it. I thought these wines were absolutely stunning, so just excuse me while I just lean over and get a couple of reds out for you. Here we are, they're in this box. Yeah, there's some beautiful Cabernet Sauvignons which I'm going to do on the show in the near future. We've got a couple of absolute bangers here. Good, first one's got a screw cap on it. So let's talk about the first one while I open the second one. Okay, so first one, Adnams Mendoza Malbec. Lovely label, really cool, really simple but fabulous design. Obviously from the Andes, from Mendoza. This is made by somebody that was brought to my attention both by a dear friend of mine who's the sales director of a company called Anotra & Co, but also the ubiquitous wine writer Tim Atkin, who 1 year in a report that he wrote up about wines of Argentina raved about this woman's Torrontés, which is a great variety they get out there. And this is made by Susana Bilbao. And Susana Bilbao is making really delicious wines. The estate is called Dominio del Plata. But Susana Bilbao is very fast becoming one of the superstars of the region. Her wines tend to be, punchily priced, actually. Although they might be good value, they start sort of like mid to high teens. This wine is being made for Adnams for $9.99. Sainsbury's, again, harking back to the Sainsbury's second show, had a brilliant, gluggable, juicy Malbec, but it had 15% Bernarda in it. I don't know if you remember that show. If you didn't see the show, then go back and have a look. And it was like a Argentinian Beaujolais, amazing quaffer, and only £7. It's absolutely the red wine bargain at Sainsbury's this Christmas. But this wine is a tenner. You know the old phrase, pay peanuts, get monkeys. So what does the extra £3 buy us here? Well, it buys you a lot more of what I maybe think you're hoping for. This is classy, deep, complex, herby, racy, sleek, plummy Malbec. Okay, this is what put Argentina on the map. Very, very large percentage of the wines I drink from Argentina, probably well over 90%, I find extremely dull or too jammy or boring. This is anything like. This has got a beautiful magenta deep sort of like hue to it, deep purple colour to it. Oh, the nose is that is so good. The nose is like sticking your nose in a jar of black cherry jam or damson jam. Or lingon. Oh yeah, lingon. Wild cranberries in Sweden are called lingonbär or lingonberries. Oh, it's just packed full of fruit, but it's not jammy. It's dry. It's got a racy tang to it. Yeah, one of my favourite wines this winter for £10. I'm going to buy some of this for my father-in-law actually, because he needs a few bottles of this just for glugging. So yes, Brian, if you're watching, we can get some of this. let's bring this on to the last wine. I said I was going to open it while I talked, but I didn't. Why did I pick this? This is kind of like what Adnams did and clearly still does. Okay. Little jewels that drop out. There are some great names in this country. Great wine merchants. Tomorrow we've got Leon Sandeman. That's going to be a really smart episode. But you've got people like Tanners of Shrewsbury that have been around forever. You've got Adnams of Southwold that have been around forever. Forgive me, I'm not mentioning lots of other people, but you know, that people trusted their judgment. And every Christmas, Adnams will bring out a Christmas claret. This is labelled as, oh dear, came straight through the cork. It looks like the cork's a bit embedded. Reason for that being, this wine's got a bit of age on it, so forgive me. I'm going to try another go at that. Not ideal. It looks like the cork may have just stuck to the side. Yeah, watch an expert murdering a bottle of wine live on camera. Give me a second. All right, let's just talk about the wine. It's from an estate, a very reliable estate in the Medoc. With the Medoc is, if you get to Bordeaux, there's a river that goes out directly east called the Dordogne. The English know that because they all have caravans there. If you go straight south, and the road and the river goes, it's called the Garonne, and it goes down and moves round towards Toulouse. But the estuary above where those two rivers meet is called the Gironde, and the Gironde's a big estuary that comes out. North of it, you've got La Rochelle, and you've got Cognac and Ile de Ré and things like that. And the south tip is the very north bit of Bordeaux. Oh dear. There's going to be could be some time here. I might actually just push this in rather than save some time, because it would do not to drink this wine as my pièce de résistance. Look, I'm getting it out bit by bit. There we go. Okay, right. So if you look at that, you'll see there's lots of broken up pieces of cork. That's why it's because the cork, just unluckily on this particular case, must have dried out. It was probably stored next to a wall somewhere. Certainly haven't had this problem before. But if you see bits of cork in here, that doesn't mean it's corked, right? Just means it's got bits of cork in. That wine is perfectly fine. So I've now poured out the bitty remnants. So I'm just going to pour myself a glass of this wine. This one comes from, as I mentioned, the Medoc, the bit that goes up north from Bordeaux, where really most of the famous wines come from. Halfway up the Medoc, you get to Pauillac, Margaux, Saint-Estèphe, Saint-Julien, where all the great wines that we know and love from over the many hundreds of years, things like Château-Latour, Château Margaux, Pichon-Baron, Aubryon from somewhere else, but some of the great Château Lafite, Château Mouton, those things like that. Well, this wine is a Cru Bourgeois, which means it was given some status as a better than average wine. It became a member of, I think, a group of about 52 other chateaux around Medoc. And I think it was formed in the 50s. Look, if this is all rubbish, look it up on Google. You can correct me, but I'm pretty sure most of this is kind of embedded in there somewhere. So what's so special about this? Well, it's made from Château Lemoine or Château des Moines. Château Lemoine. And it's an estate which produces wines which, to my knowledge, probably are about half and half Merlot Cab, I think, because this wine is ready to drink. Don't actually have the information in front of me, but typically in the Medoc, the wines have some strong Cabernet Sauvignon presence. It's kind of the point. It's kind of what it's known for. It has this wonderful inky, cassis-y smell. You've got the smell of freshly carved furniture when you open the drawer. And you can smell cut cedar. You get those smells as well, or pencil shavings. All sorts of wonderful little dry, autumn leafy kind of notes. And then you've got this core of wonderful fruit in the middle. But this is 16 quid. This is for Christmas. 16 quid for a claret. That's money. That's good. I think that's a good value. In fact, it might be just slightly more than that. It's 17 quid. It's 16.99. So, well, let's taste it. First of all, I look at it. It's got great depth of colour. Amazing colour. More than you'd expect from a Bordeaux. I'm immediately looking at that and going, it's either a super premium Grand Cru Classics or the top 16 wines, and we know it's not. We know it's a Cru Bourgeois, or it's from a sensational vintage. We've had a few of those recently, but then I'm looking at the colour and going, well, there is actually some slight changes of colour. There's a kind of brick red garnet edge to the rim. However dark it might be, this wine is starting to find some very sexy tobacco-y, plush, velvet, crushed velvet kind of colours to it. That's not a wine that's 3 or 4 years old. And then I smell it, and it's like I've just opened a fresh tube with a Monte Cristo in it. I can smell that lingering, unlit tobacco smell, which I think is so intoxicating. Many cigars smell better before you light them, right? And there's the smell of torrefaction, French, torrefaction, roasted coffee bean a little bit, which is a sign of age. Not extensive age, but it's a sign that the wine is starting to come into its next, what the French call plenitude, or period, or era, or phase of development. Massive gobfuls of fruit, creamy. Oh, black currants. Thank you. A Medoc that actually tastes of black currants. Cabernet Sauvignon's the most famous tasting note. Ever try and find a Cabernet Sauvignon that tastes of black currants, you're there for a while looking. This wine's from 2010. 13 years old, 17 quid. This wine is from one of the greatest vintages of all time. 2010 most assuredly was. If there was one exceptional problem with those vintages, that people were caught on the hop of how wonderfully ripe they got, and they picked them at very high levels of alcohol. Well, this wine's 14%, but it doesn't taste at all out of shape. This wine is fresh and balanced and round. And thank you very much, Adnams. My friend Thomas Lester, my business partner in the Reverend Hubert liqueur, if you're watching this, mate, buy a 6-bottle. This is for drinking now. Unbelievable wine. £17 for a 2010 Bordeaux in fine, perfect condition. Would it keep? No, doesn't need to. It literally feels like it's absolutely the apogee of its powers. It will be fine, and it will keep, and it will turn into all sorts of other interesting flavours, maybe attenuate a little bit over the next 3 or 4 years. But why would you? Drink it in this juicy, plush, leather-lined limo best. Are we good? Have I convinced you that Adnams know what they're doing? I mean, I'm surprised by how passionate I'm getting about this, but it's so nice to see them back in the game, as if they ever left. Sauvignon Blanc, 8.49. H Blanc champagne sauce, 26 quid, £41 for their fantastic vintage. The Morganzon's cheeky Chenin Blanc, £14. Absolutely phenomenal wine. And then we've got Talmard's white Burgundy, probably declassified Macon. Susanna Bilbao's delicious Malbec. And then this. What a finish. I'm going to have to go some to beat this lot. See you next time.